second, I'm gonna grab whoever that is.
Let's hope they got two proxies.
Oh, good, we got another person. Lori.
So agendas and minutes from the last meeting, all that good stuff on that black table over there. But otherwise, I guess we can get started.
Okay, welcome everyone to our quarterly meeting of the Rutland Emergency Management Committee. We'll start off with, do we need to do a voting roll call, or have you already figured that out?
Gosh, I mean, we're one short from the sounds of it. So
We
two.
just got another person, Mike Wetmore just came on.
Yeah, I don't,
You remember?
yeah, good question. I don't recognize his name. Mike, could you introduce yourself for a second?
I'm not sure how I got on here either, but
You should have shown up at that meeting.
I'm on the town of Hubbardton Select Board, and I'm the assistant fire chief in the town of Hubbardton. Is this something I'm supposed to be in?
No, I mean, definitely. I never got word from Hubbardton about replacing Janet when she left.
I'm her replacement.
Yeah, so I'm afraid that we won't have you as a voting member this time, which means we can't have quorum. But starting at the next meeting, our voting membership reappointments are coming up, so that's something that you'll officially be a voting member for.
Okay.
Starting sometime in October, November. So
That's all right. I didn't know I
so
was
close,
on
but not
it.
quite.
That's all right. That's good. That's a plus.
Well, welcome, Mike, we're glad you're here.
No, only the municipalities are voting members.
Do we need to do introductions? Does everyone know each other?
Guess we may as well do a quick.
Mike has introduced himself.
Mike doesn't know anybody here, so that makes it
Good
available.
I'm taking
Mike,
classes with
I'm Jan Soterakis. I'm the Emergency Management Director from the town of Chittenden, and I'm representing Chittenden Fire Department.
Okay.
Go to the room.
Bob Morlino from Town of Paulet, EMD for the Town of Paulet, Assistant Chief, Paulet Fire Department. I'm representing Paulet.
How about Tom? You're the only other person online.
We also have Tyga hopping on.
Oh,
I know who
okay.
Tom's from.
How about
Brandon.
that? Yep. Tom
Yeah.
Kilpack from Brandon.
I know.
Thanks, Tom. All right, I'll let you do the room.
Okay, let's just start with you, Eric, and we'll go around.
Okay, so my name's Eric Pulver. I am the Emergency Preparedness Specialist for the Department of Health in the district office here in Rutland.
How you doing? My name's Peter Mantello, the Chief of Police for Castleton. I'm the EMC, also standing in for the EMD Mike down there.
So pretty sure everyone knows me, but Maggie O'Brien, I'm the Emergency Management Planner for the Rutland Regional Planning Commission, and I'm also the person who helps run these meetings with the chair and vice chair.
Bill Lovett, I'm the MD for Rutland and also the fire chief.
And Lori Zeke, I'm the Crisis Director for Rutland Mental Health.
Great.
Okay, fantastic. Tyga, since you just hopped on, we're just doing a quick round of introductions instead of a voting member roll call because we don't quite have enough.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Tyga Christie. I'm the Regional Coordinator with Vermont Emergency Management. I will have my camera on in just a second. I'm not sure what's going on with it, but I'm going to fight with it some more. It's been a day of that.
Thanks, Tyga. Okay, you have the agenda in front of you. If there are no additions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
It'll have to be done by consensus since we are
By
one
consensus.
quorum. Yeah.
Okay, good point. All in favor of approving the agenda by consensus, say aye.
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 Okay. And same thing with the minutes from our last meeting, which was June 19th. Seems like it was a lot longer ago than that, but.
Yeah, and the one thing I will add is in those minutes, I erroneously said that the VEM Emergency Preparedness Conference was September 9th and 10th. It's actually 10th to 11th, so I will make that change. But that's the only amendment I'm proposing at this time.
Okay, hearing nothing else, I'll entertain that we approve the minutes by consensus. All people approving, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Any members of the public? I don't think there's anyone there, is there?
No, I would say not.
Okay.
I think outside. It might be
I was gonna say, unless you want to pull someone off the street,
Okay. All right.
I don't
now
think
we
this
move
is the number
to
one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
what was that, Eric?
I said, I don't think this is the number one hot spot on a Wednesday night in Rutland City, so.
Okay. Now we'll move into our representative reports. And the first one is Bob Morlino for the statewide local emergency planning commission. And he's got it up now.
Yep, thank you. Don't have a lot to report. We had a meeting on July 9th. It was supposed to be a presentation by Len Wallace from the US EPA Region 1 to take us through LEPCs, what their roles are, what we're supposed to be doing. Unfortunately, at the very last minute, he had to cancel out. So we spent what time we had there. We ended up spending going over the report from Patrick McLaughlin, the chief of the hazmat team. Nothing really in that report that he gave that would be, I think, of any interest to this group. It was pretty much a rundown of the kind of calls we had and the fact that they're going to be hiring a full-time person. Pat McLaughlin, the chief of the hazmat team, he's the only full-time employee. The rest of us are part-time. And he's hiring another second full-time employee. Yeah, that was pretty much it. It was a relatively short meeting. Our next meeting is October 22nd, and we expect to have Len Wallace speak to us at that time. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bob. Any questions for Bob before we move on? If not, we do not currently have a representative for the Thyra SPR committee. Do you have any updates on that, Maggie, or is there anything going on?
No. So the last time I heard from VEM, it's we didn't have to have one in the most recent year, and that might be the case next year as well. That being said, I would like to at least have a name in there in case it does come up. So that'll be among our reappointments for our first fiscal year meeting in December.
Okay. All right. And Tom Johnston is not there. Anything on the integrated planning and preparedness workshop?
Nope, that's usually done in the spring. So
Great.
things are pretty quiet right now with that.
Okay. So moving on to our organizational tasks, and I guess I'll turn that over to you, Maggie.
Yeah, and I'll actually start. I realized I totally forgot to put in an announcements portion in the agenda, but I don't really have that much to announce actually, so it kind of worked out. But I do want to reiterate, and I'll certainly send this out via email since most of the committee is not here tonight, that the statewide hybrid tabletop exercise for Binary Blizzard is happening in this location, 16 Evelyn Street, here in the large conference room on October 23rd. It's going to be an all-day event from 8 to 3:30. And there is a registration form, so I will get in touch with some of the towns who said they were interested in participating. And if that's still the case, then I will, have them confirm with me that they want to participate, and I will sign up for them. I just think that would be easier than kind of letting it go to the wind and people potentially not registering when they wanted to, or vice versa. So yeah, Tyga, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that the registration deadline I just found out is October 16th, I believe. So there is a deadline. For planning purposes, we are going to need people to sign up a little bit in advance, not wait till the day before. Which is often what I do if there's not a deadline. So that is why I say this.
Yeah, and then I guess my other quick announcement is that if you guys didn't know already, this is most likely the last REMC meeting we will have, Tyga, because we are VEM is hiring new regional coordinators. They're narrowing the regions, so to make it more manageable for the regional coordinators to work with the towns, and we're losing Tyga, unfortunately, but we love you, Tyga. You've done a lot of good stuff for the Rutland region, and we're gonna miss you.
I
Yes,
have
thank
so
you.
loved, I've so loved working in Rutland. I'm really sad to be losing you all from my region, and also really excited that you'll have someone who is only focused on 2 counties filling this role, and who will be, I think, more available and able to turn things around faster than I've been able to, and things like that. But I am really sad to be losing this region, and grateful to have worked with you for a couple of years. So thanks so much.
What are the 2 counties?
So it's going to be Bennington and Rutland. That's the new region that we're going to be a part of. As it stood until now, the southern region was like what, 6 counties? So
Yeah, it was
pretty thin
5,
there. 5.
which is a lot. You all, the towns and regions, I think, deserve more attention than we've been able to give them with the number of people we've had funding for. And this has been in the works for a long time to shift that. So this is I think, going to be a really great shift. That said, the positions are open right now. If you know anyone who's interested in applying, they're open until the 24th. We're hiring 3 more regional coordinators statewide. So if you know anyone who you think would be good in this role, send them our way.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tyga. So now we move on to the REMC organizational tasks. And the plan was to officially vote to amend our meeting time resolution. That was something we had to push off last time because we also didn't have quorum. I don't know if we want to table it again or not. There's nothing in the bylaw saying that we have to do it like officially versus doing it via consensus. So I guess I'll throw it to you, Jan. What are you thinking on that?
I'm thinking we should approve the amendment, whether we have official quorum or not. I can't believe that anybody would be all that interested in checking that up, make sure we're following the procedure.
Yeah, and really it's just changing the address. That's it. That's the only thing that changed from the original. And I guess now the approval by consensus at this meeting instead of March 27th, but that's really the only difference. The content is still exactly the same in bulk. So, okay, we're in agreement with that.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I'll entertain a motion that we approve by consensus the amended resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Aye.
perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. So Jan, I will have to get you a physical copy at some point and have you sign it for now, as the acting chair. So I'll be in touch with you offline about that.
Okay.
The other thing I want to bring to your attention, so as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, voting membership reappointments. So this is the last meeting of the fiscal year for 24. Our fiscal year for 25 starts October 1st. And during the month of October, I will be sending out to all of the voting members a form. It's a familiar form. You've seen it for the past couple of years now, where you essentially provide the contact information for the emergency management representative and the emergency services representative. And then you just complete the little statement at the bottom that essentially designates proxy. So when one person is here but the other is not, that counts as 2 representatives for the purposes of quorum. So that's something that will be coming out relatively soon. So keep an eye out on your inboxes for that. And the other thing I want to flag is that we do need a new chair for this upcoming fiscal year. Jan has graciously taken over the role after Mike Ramsey left, but we need to find she wants to remain vice chair, so we need to find a replacement. I was going to do scoping among the people who came tonight. I don't know if that would be a reasonable thing to do at this point, because I know you guys all have really full plates. So I'll probably do this work behind the scenes and try to at least make someone who might be interested aware that they could be elected next time.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Point everybody that's not here.
Okay, so now we move on to the main meat of tonight's meeting. You might have noticed that the agenda order was switched around a little bit, kind of like it was for the regional plan workshop for the meeting we had in March. And there's a reason for that. So you might have been noticing that I haven't really been in touch with you guys for the past several months. There's many reasons for that. Some of it personal, some of it work related. But it really got me thinking about our overall capacity. Not that that's something we haven't thought about before, but how to best strategize what we want to do with what we have going on right now and what resources we have. So I want to point out, since July 7th of 2023, which really wasn't that long ago, we've had 6 federally declared disasters. Only 2 of them have public assistance provided for Rutland, and that's the July 2023 and the December 2023. That being said, so the August 3rd through 5th, I mean, Rutland City got flooded pretty hard. The winter storm in January of 24, pretty much the entire county had a slew of power outages, Castleton getting the worst of it. So just to reiterate that, just because we've only been officially declared for 2 out of these 6 disasters, that doesn't mean A, that we're not getting hit, and B, that we shouldn't expect to not get hit in the future. Quite frankly, it's just been luck that we've been able to dodge a lot of what's happened in 2024. So with that in mind, and knowing that the climate is changing, I wanted to take a step back and kind of look at what the purpose of this committee was for and what it was originally founded for. So in our bylaws, this comes directly from our bylaws, that the purpose of the REMC shall be to coordinate emergency planning and preparedness activities to improve the region's ability to prepare for, respond to, and recover from all disasters. That's pretty standard. It kind of follows the language of the emergency management cycle. And when I first took over this position from Stephanie almost 2 years ago now, I initially took Binary Blizzard as kind of like my guiding North Star to kind of at least get into the role of helping the EMDs in the region kind of focus on the broader goal to be prepared for. It worked at the time, but as I've just shown you, federally declared disasters have been ramping up, and I had the thought, wait, why aren't we taking advantage of that? Why aren't we building on lessons learned even from other regions to be more prepared for the things that are happening now? I mean, don't get me wrong, exercises are still valuable, and they still have their own merit, but I feel like it would be a better use of resources to focus on the things that are like affecting us now, instead of a hypothetical. And another thing that's been running around in my head for the past several months is that we're all maxed out. I think we know it. It's been the silent elephant in the room, but I mean, that's part of the reason why I haven't been in touch with you guys the past several months. Part of it was, again, personal family stuff, but also I'm just juggling so many programs here at this point that unfortunately EMPG has not been getting the attention it deserves. And I know from everyone I talk to with the towns, EMTs are mostly volunteer positions. That's something that we've discussed for a while now. The strain on volunteer capacity that can be, and the fact that we have so few people showing up to committee meetings the past couple of times, I think is a statement in itself. So while we do want to try to strategize tonight to make the most of our resources, we also need to keep this limitation in mind. And think about the best way that we can not only build our capacity, but do so in a way that it won't already make the situation worse, essentially. So whoops. So now what? That's the big question. And in the agenda, I kind of have the 3 basic questions I wanted us to focus on. So if you attended the March meeting, you might recall that I had a Miro board diagram that I kind of walked you guys through to gather information. And I want to do something similar for this strategizing to kind of help organize our thoughts. So once my browser loads, any day now. Cool, okay.
Just want to skip to the 3rd one.
Oh, wait, I think I got it. Computer was just mad at first. Okay, so essentially what I have here are the 3 questions on the agenda plus the 2 items underneath it. And I just kind of want to go through that and hear from you guys on, your input. I really want this to be a EMD led discussion, or a committee member led discussion rather. So I think at first it's helpful to take a step back and look at what we've been doing now. And by now, I mean, probably within the past year, not so much the past couple of months, because we haven't been doing much. So I can start us off. I know that the Chittenden Reservoir group has still been pretty active. Because we have Jan, so of course it's gonna be active.
Slave charter.
And originally I had, every year I kind of have an agenda of activities that I would like the region to participate in. And I was able to get the first half of it out pretty well. We had the mini long-term power outage tabletop in October, the vulnerable populations drill in November. And then in January, February, March, we had a bunch of things related to LEMPS and to the vulnerable populations protocol. We reviewed the Public Works Mutual Aid Agreement, as we do once every 2 years. And then we got into the third quarter, April, May, June, and things just kind of started falling apart. So I did have the inclement weather plan development workshop, but no one showed up. So it ended up being a recording. And hopefully that's something I can still offer in the future. But after that, things just kind of went downhill in terms of I couldn't secure guest speakers because of the capacity issue that we're talking about. Or I couldn't get courses scheduled in time. And then with the summer, we didn't get hit, thank God, but the northern half of the state has gotten wrecked pretty bad again. And as a result, Tyga was in the SEOC for several weeks, so she wasn't available for us. And between other responsibilities that I've been trying to juggle, so I feel bad that things kind of fell apart, but I also feel like this is our opportunity to be like, okay, how do we keep this from happening in the future? So I guess with that, does anyone want to provide any thoughts about either what we're doing now or what we want to or should be doing?
Let's go down in a second.
Okay.
Because I think we know what we've been doing. You just said it all. So
what we should be doing. I guess let me start with what kind of topics have been on your guys' radar lately? What have you been dealing with? What's been taking up most of your time in the emergency management realm?
I think for me, in my field, which can become an issue when you have like the summer, and I hate to say it like this, but it's the truth, a large transient populations that put a lot of stress on communities, which then results in crimes, which then results in a lot of things. That's a huge issue. It's not going away.
It's gonna be worse this week.
Absolutely. They're supposed to let them out. They're supposed to let them out. And I know it's not your typical emergency management disaster type thing, and I wouldn't say it's a disaster, but it puts a lot of stress on the community and resources. And we're seeing it even in our small town. It's overflows.
Would you say that's accurate, Bill? Because I know that's probably going to be a big thing here in the city.
What's that?
Yeah, it's going to be your item of focus.
Killing my budget already.
I
I mean, I'm about at least a third of my budget has been spent just July and August. It's just getting
With the
ridiculous.
hotels.
A lot, the games they're playing. We had a meeting at City Hall recently about the impact of the closures and, we had a contingent of owners. We didn't know this was really gonna happen. It's like, seriously? Well, the state always changes their mind and throws more money. And that's basically it. And that's shame on the state. They were trying to do what they thought was a good thing. But now, I mean, my station, they broke my fire escape door trying to get in. The guys chased them away. 2 hours later, they almost got into the basement looking for a place. I've had people wanting to pitch tents all over the city on side lawn at the fire station. DPW or the Rec and Parks Department, 150 pounds of garbage that was in Pine Hill Park on last Monday. That was one day of pickup. Needles, feces, all sorts of terrible, awful things.
Squatters getting into unoccupied buildings, apartments, somehow they find out, next thing you know, somebody complains, they smell something and it's a mess, so. I know it's not on everybody's radar, but it's affecting every part of the community.
It's definitely affecting Rutland mental health for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can't imagine.
Absolutely, it's huge.
Yeah.
So I don't know,
And it's affecting the hospital. They're not here, but I can say that.
Yeah,
You guys have nowhere to take people. You take them to the hospital. We have to go see them there. It's a huge drain of resources. They're not mentally ill. They're just making bad decisions most of the time. Some of them are mentally ill.
I
But
would say most of them are not mentally ill.
there's just a lot of bad decision making going on. And then we get called in because it's not a medical problem. It's, yeah, I don't need to tell you guys, but it's a huge drain.
So we are the outreach care team. For anyone that doesn't know, so Rutland City, there's an outreach care team. We're 4 partner agencies, including our Medical Reserve Corps, which is a volunteer, technically disaster-oriented organization, Rutland Mental Health, Turning Point Center of Rutland, and then who am I missing? I always forget the one. The Free Clinic. I don't know how I keep forgetting them. That was real bad of me. Don't tell Tia, please. So in the Free Clinic, so we go out and we are bringing field services to, people that have this housing insecurities, specifically in Rutland City. I do know that they were doing a ton of contacts and stuff like that in June. Unfortunately, the Rutland City Police Department, their mobile command center was no longer able to be registered anymore because it's too old. And so that kind of fell off. So some of their contacts have gone down. But we are going to do a big strategy meeting on 2025 here in October. And so hopefully we'll be able to kind of figure out exactly what goals and target some of that for Rutland City, and then sort of discuss possibilities of going outside or talking to like Castleton or Brandon or wherever on sort of doing similar things there. So on that end, we are doing some stuff, but yes, the changes to the housing program is putting a big strain on a lot of places. It's going to be a short-term strain though, hopefully, in that it should be sharing the load among everyone in the state instead of the massive amount that we've had to deal with here in Rutland for the last 4 years. But
So how does that work? Are people getting evicted from hotels going to get transported to other parts of the state?
there is some talk of that. That's going to be an agency of human services. But from what I've heard is that they are discussing possibly being able to move people because there's a cap now. My understanding is that there is a cap of about 400 people per region, roughly can be housed. So that way, because we got to a point in 2023 where Rutland had 850 people that we were being housed in basically Rutland City town. And it was more than Burlington. Burlington at the time had 810. And so we were having we had the brunt of it. And so the hope was to be able to move some people around, give a time limit so that way people that were from out of state, which isn't as high as people say, it's about 10%, I think, or less. They might be able to go back to, where they were and, stuff like that. Just,
you see, so what I see and talking to different people is when they first started this whole program during COVID, this is when I see it all began. At least I remember people coming out of state coming up here. And the Vermont state was considered a refuge state for those people, which is, I'm not against that. The problem is that's a planning issue. When you invite 800 per large city and plus you had the regular population, I don't think they realized what it did to the communities. And the crime that was and mental health, they had nowhere to put them. So
That's the thing is I'm living in fear of November. I mean, that's when I get it. People are going to be in the ED saying everything they need to say to have a roof over their head, which is understandable. and there's nowhere for them to go.
And it's an economy destroyer. And I'm not blaming the people. It's the plan that never should, it's almost like everybody was isolated. They came up with this plan, but they never talked really with anybody that's dealing with the people.
No, they never talked.
I think that's a huge issue.
I mean,
Just
one of our issues, the rooms meals tax, what offsets the anticipated tax revenue. You know, we're down, I can't remember.
Oh,
what
I
the number
bet.
was, well over $2 million. I think it's 2.1 million. That now is a burden that the taxpayers have to deal with, you know, and that's where, you know, the state has kind of not really addressed any of our issues.
Because people are not eating out as much, is that what you're saying?
There's no place to eat.
There's no place to eat in the restaurants and the places have all changed.
Either stolen from or they can't get staff.
Staff.
There's Applebee's, there's
And
99, and there's Tasso's.
I just went there too. I love
And
it.
there's a couple taco bars and that's it. All the other restaurants are gone now. We have no viable, usable, rentable hotel spots in the city of Rutland right now.
Does that you guys see? Do you understand? Do you agree or disagree? Out there in TV land.
Definitely agree.
Well, we noticed in the parks, because we got a bunch of parks in our area. They're camping everywhere.
Really?
The one thing.
And that's another thing, even on private property. So the biggest thing that we try to inform these property owners is that whole landlord tenant issue. They cannot be there more than 30 days. If they're 30 days, they're considered a tenant. Whether it's outside, inside, the squatting laws are hard. We just spent residents up in Birdseye 2 years trying to evict somebody that didn't, they were squatting. It was drugs, it was this and that. It took 2 years to get them out of there through the courts. So well, I'm sorry, I don't want to rant for it.
So I think to kind of pull this back around to emergency management, because that's gonna be
Absolutely. That's
a
what
bit
I'm
of
saying.
a safety and health
It's
focus
a lot of
area.
things. A lot of covers everything.
I think one thing that we probably need to think about is, you know, in that sort of, I'm gonna use terms we're using now, which is disability access and functional needs, which is the new vulnerable populations, you know, we're moving away from that. It's a more broader, I'm not gonna get into it, but I think that is an area that we could look at because people with housing insecurity, people with, you know, that are experiencing substance use issues, people that may have issues with a mental health or anything like that. We have to sort of look at planning for that in a disaster because, you know, we have been relatively impact-free from a lot of the flooding. Now, obviously, last year we had more impact, but this year very little, if not any. And, you know, I don't think anyone's plans has anything in there about what do you do when you've got, you know, 100 or 200 people that are unhoused in your, you know, specifically Rutland City, but even, you know, I know Brandon has more, Middlebury's been talking about more. And so what do you do with that? You know, do we open a shelter? How do we communicate with them? How do we make sure that they can go to that shelter if we do have a disaster? And so I think that's an area that we could look at is doing some planning or doing some training on, you know, generalized access and functional needs, but also specifically because it's a big problem in Rutland, you know, something about, you know, unhoused populations.
There was a big conversation about a shelter that Rutland Mental Health was involved in, and we ended up bowing out. We can't fill the staff position.
I was gonna say get turnover.
We can't. The idea of running a shelter that requires 24/7 staffing,
Security.
we can't, you know, all of it. We just,
Well, specifically in a a so if we did have another flood, you know, opening up an emergency
Right.
shelter like in Rutland High School.
oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's a whole
Yeah,
separate
It's
thing.
not so much even that disaster is winter's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got, thank God, Brock is not giving out tents. That's a rumor that's out there. They are not. It's the Methodist Church folks. And they really think they're doing a good thing and that's their opinion. But they're going out in these tents that are not much better than sunshades. We're gonna have a lot of people dying of exposure. the overdoses that they don't realize they're dying of exposure until it's too late. And that's gonna be the real crisis. It's coming. In my eyes, we're gonna have a lot of people freezing to death. You can go up behind Home Depot right now, and if there isn't 100 people up there,
Really?
oh yeah, down at the end of Park Street where the slaughterhouse is, that's a huge colony. In fact, one of my folks that I check in routinely because they like to be alone, they like to live out next to the river. Their kids go to school every day. They're clean. They're very nice people. They just said these homeless people are ruining what we have here. They've been there for 3 years. They're doing wonderful. And we just make sure they're okay when it's cold and stuff. Now they're getting even pushed out of where they've been. The dress factory, we don't go into the building anymore. They're in there. They're in Pine Hill Park. They're down
behind, the wrong town.
behind Dick's Sports.
Yes.
They're down behind Suburban Propane to the point where the people in the propane plant have to move them out of the plant every day to load the trucks. That's my big fear is these poor people are going to freeze to death.
Well, we had heat this summer. Probably had more heat injuries, people, just for normal people, let alone homeless people. Or what's the term now? Housing.
I mean, homeless is okay. We usually use person-first language, so it would be like person experiencing homelessness or
Okay,
person with
gotcha.
housing insecurity, stuff like that.
Gotcha, okay.
But I'm not gonna.
All right, I just want to make sure.
I'm not gonna
I am recording here.
Yeah.
No.
I have young adult children. I get called to task all the time over these things.
I'll stay right to the.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that's
think
my biggest fear.
I think that just to like as you said, Chief Levitt, this is a huge issue and huge concern as winter is coming up, and that it's one that is sort of, I think, falling through the cracks between AHS and VEM and VDH, and there's not I'm not going to pretend there's a good solution from the state side. And I also, given the focus of this group, want to kind of reiterate what Eric said about like these groups of people who likely don't have access to internet and phone service, and so are not getting Vermont alerts and not hearing in the moments when there is a shelter that's available because of a weather emergency that they can take advantage of. How is communication going to happen? Or when there is a flood coming and there are people living by the river, like how are we communicating with these people who are part of the community, even though that's a complicated relationship, and who need access to that life safety information and resources? I think that's a really good set of questions to be thinking about, in addition to all of the day-to-day questions that you're bringing up, Chief, that need to be considered as well.
Hawaii last winter, for instance, we've got PAs in the pickup trucks. And because it's kind of hard to access my friends down by the creek, I get down there and say, hey, the mission is open. They've got, like 8 beds. If you guys want to go there, it would be physically impossible for me to visit each of these encampments, even if they would follow my directions. I mean, I know I will never have the capacity. There's not a vacant building in the city of Rutland that we could even convert into a shelter. My only shelter now is the high school. So, in the population, I mean, the high school doesn't have close to the capacity what we need, but where then would this school children go?
As far as communication, the group that you mentioned that I know Rutland Mental Health has someone involved, that you guys do outreach. That group does outreach, right?
Yep. So they do outreach and they bring, medical needs, mental health needs, substance abuse counseling needs directly to them in the field.
So in the event of, let's say, sustained 20 below temperatures, would they know where to go and be able to go to communicate with people that there's a shelter at the high
Yep.
school, for instance?
So I think that's one of the really big positives. This is going to be Rutland City specific. I do really want to make sure we understand that. Yeah. So I can't get them to Castleton or anything like that.
Right.
But within Rutland City, so the outreach care team, it's led by Project Vision and it's led by Commander Prouty. And he pretty much knows everything that's going on in this town. And he knows where the encampments are. He knows where everyone is. People that are out there are contacting him to get showers or laundry or whatever. And so that for Rutland City is a key piece there, at least right now, is to be able to have the outreach care team could do things on, you know, if it is going to be super, you know, way below zero or whatever, they could get out to these places and say, hey, you know, let's get you somehow up to, you know, if we do open the shelter at the school, we'll figure out a way to get them up there too. But unfortunately, some of this stuff it's out of my hands, it's out of Tyga's hands, it's housed within the Agency of Human Services. And one of the other things that they're currently tasked with, their emergency manager, Jason Goslin, who we've talked about before, he is also now tasked with long-term recovery from not only the 23 floods, but the
from
24.
every disaster we've had.
Yes.
So he's overwhelmed just with that.
So he's overwhelmed with that. He has that entire thing on his plate. And on top of that, we now, thankfully, in a lot of ways, we have built more capacity for this stuff with these long-term recovery groups and also with the COAD that we have here in Rutland. So he also sort of is their liaison with the state and these long-term recovery groups. So this is going to be one of those situations where I don't know how it's going to affect extreme weather sheltering and AHS deciding on when to open those, but I have a feeling it's going to be much more complicated, especially with the north being re-hit this year.
I do
So
think
Mike-
bringing, oh, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Oh, I was just, you're good, Tyga.
I was just going to suggest trying to find someone from AHS to bring into an REMC meeting might be a productive, might be a useful conversation, because I think that emergency management and AHS kind of are a little more siloed than is ideal on this. And it might be worthwhile at least voicing these issues to an AHS rep and hearing what they have to say. Sorry, Jan, I didn't see your hand. I realized I just talked over here.
No problem. No problem.
I'll talk to you.
Okay.
Sorry, Jan, go.
I'm sorry, did you say?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I was going to move in a different direction, so I want to make sure that if there's things people want to add on this discussion, we finish that before I go in.
I think we're at a good transition point.
Okay. You mentioned the CREEP team, and I do think that that's something that I would like to see reflected here, that the Chittenden Reservoir Emergency Action Plan, that's what CREEP stands for. I think we have committed to regular meetings. We now have brought the town of West Rutland as well as Proctor into the mix and really making some strides in planning for a dam emergency at the reservoir. So I think that's been a plus. 4 of us did a presentation at the conference last week, Maggie, Bob Case, and Bill Lovett, and myself. I've had some really good questions posed to me since that conference. Many people are requesting a copy of the presentation that we did. I guess we could share that if anyone wants to see how the town of Chittenden and then subsequent downstream communities were involved in putting together the CREEP team. 2 other things. First of all, what we've been doing, I personally have been doing a ton of grant writing. The hazard mitigation grant pots that are available out there, I don't know if any other emergency management directors are doing that. And if they're not, that may be a topic that we need to talk about more regionally, because there's a ton of money between hazard mitigation and BRIC. BRIC is building resiliency in communities. I've got 4 projects going under those grants right now. Most of them are road projects, but one is a water road issue. And I think that that's an area that perhaps we could move in the direction of helping other EMDs or whomever in a town writes grants for those kinds of things. There's a lot of money. I mean, $91 million in one pot. So if you don't have someone to write the grants, or you need help writing the grants, maybe there's something we can do locally to help that out.
And I would say sorry, Jan.
No, go
But I
ahead.
would just say that's a perfect example of leveraging what we have going on right now, because as you said, $90 million alone from July 2023, and we're gonna have how many more funding rounds coming down the pipeline now that we've had an additional 6? So yeah, I definitely agree, between that and maybe even potentially helping towns through the, PA process. BEM doesn't really let us into that factors process, so I don't really know too much about it, but, if we're
That
going
was
to be having more
actually my next point.
disasters. Yeah, if we're gonna be having more disasters, then, that's something we should probably get well versed in, so we can have that easy transfer of knowledge as these things become more and more common.
I've been through PA four times now, I think. If you've not been through it, it can seem very daunting and overwhelming. However, there's many things that you can do in preparation for the disaster. I know at one point, some of us got together after the July 23 flooding, and we all talked about you need to have a procurement policy, and you need to have your applicant benefits checklist, and there's a whole pile of things that if you had those done in advance, it makes the whole process much easier. Again, I don't think anything like that exists at the state level. Maybe Tyga knows. My guess is the way you find that out is reading all those lengthy emails when the disaster happens. It'll tell you stuff. But I think some of us could get together and put together a checklist kind of thing that do this stuff before the next one affects you kind of thing. And that was all I had.
Yeah, that's also something that we could bring the recovery mitigation team, Kim Kanaraki, could potentially come to an REMC meeting and talk with you about that and be part of that process with you if that's useful.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say, on sort of the talk about public assistance or individual assistance through FEMA, one of the things that came out of the 23 floods is the state is moving towards what they're calling a recovery region model. And so at the moment, there's going to be currently 3 regions across the state. There'll be one in the Northwest, one in the Northeast, and then one in the South. Theoretically, the South might break up into 2. We don't know yet. But somebody who was hired by FEMA that lives in Vermont, Kelly, I forget her last name off the top of my head, but she is actually convening a group to work on what a recovery region will look like, what it's going to do, and sort of the work that it will do. And so a lot of that's going to, inhabit things like long-term recovery groups or co-ads. It's going to look at sort of what towns can do to be prepared to start moving into recovery, those kind of things. So I am sort of a big piece on that because of what we're doing here in Rutland with the Rutland Regional Disaster Cooperative. So that is just now starting. What that looks like, I don't know, but it'll probably be something that will come to an REMC meeting probably in the next 6-12 months to talk about what that'll look like. So I do want to say that that is something that is coming down the pipeline, hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's great. I actually wasn't aware of that, so thank you. I guess maybe unless anyone has anything else they want to say in terms of where we think we should be going or not, I'll kind of put you on the spot, Eric, in terms of where the Regional Disaster Cooperative is at right now and how we can kind of start aligning the REMC and the RRDC to work together towards a more common objectives.
Sure. So I guess to kind of give real quick background, I know some of you, were on the meetings and they know what I'm going to talk about, but one of the big things, like I've talked about, long-term recovery groups or COAD. COAD stands for Community Organizations Active in Disaster. It is something that is typically everywhere else, is something that sort of is there to support nonprofits and social service agencies in working with county emergency management and sort of being on the same, table with everyone. Here in Vermont, obviously, it's a little different. And so what we've done in Rutland is kind of a modified version of that. And so we have what is called the Rutland Regional Disaster Cooperative. It is technically a COAD, but I thought it was very important that municipalities were involved in this. And so it's going to be, the biggest piece there is capacity building, like we've been talking about. Because what we need to really do is we need to start looking at the resiliency and sort of looking at disaster risk mitigation or reduction, because here we have not a lot of, what I kind of term paid emergency management. Obviously we had Tyga, but she had 5. I always thought it was 4, but it was actually 5. So we only get 20% of Tyga. And we have Maggie, and then we have myself at VDH, and then we would have somebody at the hospital. And so that was it, though, for the entire region. And it wasn't really a one person or one entity kind of coordinating everybody. And so with that, the RRDC is sort of going to be one of those things that could help, with that. And so with that capacity building, I want to make sure that this is a paid position. Obviously with Peter, obviously with Bill, obviously with you all, a lot of you have like things like police chief or fire chief or whatever, where in a disaster, you have to go do that stuff too. And it just puts a lot on their plates. And so if we had somebody whose sole paid position was to work on emergency management through the whole cycle, but especially in response and recovery, that's really important. On top of that, it's going to also coordinate the ability for nonprofits, businesses, individuals, other community-based organizations to be able to coordinate with the towns. So we have things like the Vulnerable Populations Protocol, which Maggie sends out. Well, it could be a situation where we have an internal centralized communication that you all can say, hey, I've got this stuff going on at this street, and the social service agencies will be in that loop. So then they can see, and then they can go, oh, we might have somebody on that street. And so then, we'll be able to have a lot more internal conversations on that end. It might include things like resource management, because I know some of you have heard me talk about this quite a bit, but if one town has some resource needs, they have to call 26 other towns here in Rutland. Well, it could be a situation where we all have a shared platform. You put a message on there. Jan, I'm going to keep using you as my example. Jan's got extra generators. Right now.
I did.
She did.
Oh, did you lose some?
She did have extra
We
generators.
sent them all out to Pittsfield and over the mountain. Every one of them we sent over the mountain. So don't have any now.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be a situation where she could just, put on a message and say, hey, I've got extra generators. And then, Peter could go, hey, I need a generator. Or Bob could, call and be like, oh, we need one at Paulette. Instead of Jan having to go, I'm going to call down the long list and see if anyone needs a generator, or reverse that. And let's say Jan doesn't need to get rid of generators. She needs food. Instead of then calling Rutland City first, then Castleton and Brandon and all that kind of stuff, she can just put a message out and says, hey, I need some food. And then, Bob can be like, oh, Paulette, we aren't really impacted. We can send some food up to Chittenden. And so that's sort of one of the things. But long story short, because I'm making this a really long, complicated explanation, is that we do actually have this COAD. The RRDC does exist. We had our bylaws passed by the steering committee back in July. And so at the moment, what we're doing is we're working on trying to find funding through either grants or whatever to be able to pay for an executive director whose sole job will be to do the entire emergency management cycle. And I will say that somebody has already talked to us and was interested in doing that position in and of itself. Jan knows who it is, but it's not Jan.
I was about to say.
It's not Jan. Jan knows who it is, though. But basically, I've been talking to Dave Atherton. Nothing's official. I don't want to say anything about that, but he has expressed interest if we do find funding in possibly doing the executive director position. So that's not, like I said, nothing's official, but I think what I'm trying to do here and put that out there a little bit is that there is a lot of interest, and I think I know a lot of you respect, like Dave, for instance,
Yep.
and I really would hope that you respect me enough that we really want to build this co-ed out, and we really want to make it something that is helpful and is really something that is going to assist all of you. I know what some of the questions I've had is that, is this, the RRDC, is it going to take over, response in my town? Absolutely not. We're there to do three things, which is communicate, which that will lead to then more collaboration among us, everybody, which then, once we have a disaster and we have recovery, will lead to more coordination between everybody. And so that's kind of the main area we're looking at doing, on top of that, doing things for unmet needs or whatever. So to go back to sort of what Maggie has been talking about, here with the REMC and sort of what are y'all doing, where are we going? I had the good idea I had the idea. Maggie said it was a terrible idea, and so I went with her, which was that I had the thought to make the COAB, the RRDC, have a town committee. And Maggie was like, they don't want to go to another meeting.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of where we've discussed having sort of this joint partnership between the RRDC and the REMC, or the Planning Commission, to be able to sort of have one meeting where we all talk. And so there's things that Maggie will go do, and then there's things that, there's trainings or whatever assistance that the COAD can do. And so that's kind of where this whole conversation kind of is coming from.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece. In order to get everything coordinated and directed, you gotta pay somebody.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
That was,
Everybody's maxed out, like you said. Nobody's really. I go to enough meetings as it is. I definitely don't want to go to another one.
Yeah.
There's nothing against anybody here. It's
Oh,
just
absolutely not.
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff. And so we don't, and like I said, again, Maggie was like, that's a terrible idea. And I said, you're right.
Good job.
And I listened to her. And so, I think that's really important that we, both the RAMC, you all, and the RRDC understand and are working together, because we shouldn't be working in silos. Tyga talked about AHS and BEM are kind of in silos. We don't want that, and we want to work together, because that's how, whole community preparedness and emergency management should be. I know Jan's got some thoughts.
No, I'm just working along in the process. I originally was mostly concerned about coordinating resources. That's where my interest is, from having been through Tropical Storm Irene. There was no coordination. So I see that for me as the biggest thing that would be a positive that comes out of this. And I'm remaining open-minded on everything else.
Yeah, precisely, because I think, in my opinion, we have to know what resources the towns have, but there's a lot of untapped resources that no one knows where they are. Obviously, one of the things we're really learning with recovery is we're going to places like Home Depot and Lowe's and Walmart and saying, we need muck out kits. So we need buckets, we need shovels, and we need all this kind of stuff. And then Home Depot and Lowe's are giving gift cards, or they're giving actual tools to long-term recovery groups to do that kind of work. And so if we already have established relationships with, I know in Rutland City, we got a Harbor Freight, we got a Home Depot. If we already have that established relationship with those two businesses, it's a much easier ask to them to be like, hey, we need, muck out kits, or we need tools to be able to fix stuff or whatever. And so that's part of it. And then also the social service agencies and the nonprofits, they are going to be able to, have some sort of mechanisms to respond, to some sort of disaster, or they're going to have populations that they need to deal with. And so they need to communicate with, Peter and Castleton to be like, hey, I've got somebody, over here. Are you able to go check on them or whatever? And so there's that piece. And then also they just have, the ability to do other stuff as part of disaster response and recovery. You know, if we've got Rutland Mental Health is, you know, a really close partner, we can say, hey, we need some mental health and social support, you know, within this disaster. Because one thing I have is there's a massive gap in this state, which is what I call the 1 to 12 hour mental health support in a disaster of some sort. And the state's Department of Mental Health understands that there's that gap, but they can't fill it. They don't have the capacity. And so if we have an established relationship with, you know, you all already, we can say we have a disaster here. Can you assist in that sort of 1 to 12 hour range? Before then, we can get state resources and stuff like that down. So there's some of that, you know, that possibilities. You know, I am a big picture type, and so I'm going to come up with all sorts of crazy ideas. I'm not supposed to say crazy anymore. Bonkers ideas to be able to kind of what this can do. But I think right now, what we're really looking at is sort of the main areas on this. And I actually wrote down, I forgot I have actual things here that I could say, on some strategies that we want to kind of look for over 2025 and 2026. And so in 2025, our main one is just to secure our funding. So that way we have that paid executive director. We want to look at creating some committees, you know, the town committee, no, but other committees, especially around things like unmet needs. So that way we can assist the individuals in your towns or your municipalities that maybe FEMA's individual assistance wasn't enough to fix their entire house. And so we have then access to the Vermont VOAD, or the volunteer organizations. And so that way we can request national support from Team Rubicon or from the Mennonites or whatever. And they might be able to come in and do some of that work for free. So we want to look at sort of creating some of those committees. And then we want to work on sort of creating an emergency operations plan for the COAD that will hopefully be in conjunction with you all and with Maggie so that we can support your efforts within your municipalities. Like I said, I don't want to take over anything. Absolutely not.
Good, thanks, Eric.
So I will stop you.
You're like the mad scientist. You're down in your basement writing up all this stuff, weren't you?
Yes, I am.
Well, that's actually very good.
So that's kind of where we're at. And I would love to be able to have this partnership and know what you all want to be able to sort of push, you know, the COAD in that direction.
I think the biggest thing I've gotten out of this conversation tonight is that we're at a crossroads where we have this opportunity to build these partnerships, these networks. And that's something we should really take advantage of. But just for those bigger issues like we started this conversation with transient populations, for you know, or increased rates of disasters and needs that are going to come out of that. So I really like where this conversation went tonight. Unless anyone has anything else to say, I will just kind of wrap it up and say in terms of next steps, I will be meeting with our executive director here at the RRPC next week to kind of talk about game plan for EMPG 24. I will likely bring this into the conversation. Looking to kind of organize my thoughts based on what's been said tonight and kind of, I guess, come up with a strategy guide, essentially, that I can share with the committee. So TBD on that. I need to let it simmer a little bit, but I want to get something out of the conversation we had, get it into a working form, and have it, make sure that we actually, you know, take advantage of the opportunity that we have in front of us right now. So that's kind of where I'm at with that, unless you guys have any more questions, comments.
I have one more comment to share with the group, and maybe Peter, did you go to the dispatch meeting last week? And I think it was in Pittsburgh.
No, I didn't. I missed that one. I intended to go, but I've kind of kept track of it. I do get some of the emails and stuff like that from the people that are involved.
Okay. Last Thursday, there's a consultant that's been hired to help the 911 board address the issues related to dispatching and how to make the systems functional, interoperable between departments, and cost effective. And what they were asking for is town and emergency services representation at this meeting to give input on what we thought would be really helpful. So the meeting was about a 2-hour meeting. There was some really good information, some things when you start talking about CAD systems and these applications on phones and things that emergency service workers may be using. I'm not familiar with those. But the one piece that I wanted to share with you, and it was kind of an aha for me, if you were around when the dispatch center in Rutland was closed and consolidated down to Westminster, I certainly had the impression that that decision was being made with a recommendation from the Vermont State Police to the Commissioner of Public Safety to the governor. I found out very quickly through that meeting that, according to Jen Morrison, who's the Commissioner of Public Safety, that was not the case, that the Vermont State Police did not support consolidation of dispatchers, which, I mean, Peter, you were around back then. Was that your impression?
So, yes, I was gonna say, it really came out of the commissioner prior to Jen, was Mike. He's the one that pushed it. He came in there out of, I forget, another state agency before he got that position. And he's the one that pushed it. I remember going to the chief's meetings and we were all like, okay. And then it went through and then there was no backup plan and it just was a cluster.
Mhm.
We kind of evened it out.
A lot of issues, but my point in wanting to stress this to you is that I personally was holding some resentment against the state police for having done this. She reassured me that that was not the case. I followed up with her again on Sunday at the Fallen First Responders Memorial Ceremony at the Police or Fire Academy. We talked about it further. She wants to move ahead, don't dwell on the past. But I think it's important for those of us who felt strongly that that was not the best idea, that we acknowledge that it wasn't state police that had the idea. Commissioner Keith Flynn and Governor Shumlin were primarily the ones who sponsored that. So some of this applies to some of you that were around for dispatch, but I do think having information about what future dispatch systems are going to look like is important for anyone on the first responder side. And that's it.
Yeah, that's been going on for years now. So I don't know how close they are, but I know
There's
Jen's,
still
you know,
ways.
they are still ways, and I don't know if it's gonna get resolved by the time I retire. Serious. The way the economy is, so I don't know.
They're having 4 meetings with towns and emergency
Correct.
responders.
Yes.
And then they're going to have public meetings where public can attend. I think they said they'd do 4 scattered throughout the state to give input from what are your concerns. I had no idea that there were actually people who have complained that the ambulance didn't get to them for 45 minutes or the fire truck didn't get there for 30 minutes and their house was just about burned down. I'm like, I don't know if that is true data or not. Those were some of the comments that were mentioned. So they're looking at efficiencies. I did suggest to them that the dispatchers are probably the best ones to talk to because they're the ones doing the job and they know where the issues are. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just thought I'd mention that. There was a fairly large turnout. It was heavy on law enforcement. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I've been through that, you know.
But that's it. So are we all finished then?
Yeah, I mean, technically a consensus to end the meeting, but yes, I
Okay.
would say we're probably at a good stopping point. Don't want to keep you folks too late.
Maggie,
Thanks.
can I make a
Oh.
quick announcement?
Yes, absolutely, Megan.
Awesome. So you all know about the shift in regional coordinators that's coming up. I also wanted to share that we're doing an update to the local emergency management plan. So this next, there'll be some shifts the next round, as you're submitting your plan. That was required because of some legislative statutory changes that the legislature made this past session that required us to update. And so we made a couple other changes that are improvements that people had been pointing out to us for quite a while. And we had said we want to do a bunch of changes at once, not change a few things, each year. So there's a couple of, it's not a lot, but there's a couple of things that will be different. your REMC voting members will be identified on your local emergency management plan, so that when Maggie or I go, who are the REMC voting members? That's information, contact information is all in one place. So that's one of the things. There's going to be some clarification on sheltering requirements in the LEMP, because that is the legislative change that was made that required the update, is some change to the language around sheltering. It's nothing that is like huge or revolutionary. And we'll have more information about the details of all of this at the next REMC meeting. But just know that there's going to be a couple of shifts coming out. One of the way that these shifts are connected is that your regional coordinator will be your point person for submitting your local emergency management plan and getting it approved, rather than sending it to Maggie and then having Maggie send it on to the RC. Now that you have a regional coordinator as of around the start of the year, is our hope, who is devoted to just your 2 counties, they'll be doing that work of checking with you, of collecting the emergency management plans and approving them, rather than putting a bunch of Maggie's time and energy into that. And then some of the Maggie, you can update on this too, but some of the RPC duties under EMPG will be shifting a little bit to accommodate that. So Maggie will still be available through EMPG to do things like support creating and adapting and completing annexes to the local emergency management plan and things like that. You can still work with Maggie or I, or a combination, on that kind of planning work. But for submitting your plan and going through that process, you'll work directly with me, rather than having that like a kind of awkward 2-step process we were doing of submitting to Maggie and then passing it on to me and then sending, like going back and forth through 2 people. Yeah, Bob, go ahead.
Does this change any of the funding from VEM to the Rutland Regional Planning Commission? The funding stays the same?
Maggie, you might actually have more information on this than me. There were some shifts in EMPG funding, and so part of the reason for this is to take some of the like paperwork of doing the emergency management plan approval off of Maggie's plate, so that she has time under EMPG to do the other kinds of work that she does with you all. But Maggie, you might have a better answer to this. I think you have at least as much information as me, and probably more.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I would really add, I don't want to throw out exact numbers in case that's sensitive for some reason, but naturally, if one of our 4 tasks is getting shut off from our scope of work for this program, that naturally means there's less money. So, and I know that that's something that might potentially change. I know that mid-session, the RPCs are going to try to make an argument to get a little more funding for this program, but don't know how that's going to go. But that being said, it's kind of like the email I sent out to the EMDs yesterday, that unfortunately confused a few people. Like, I will still be coordinating trainings, I will still be managing this committee, I will still be doing anything related to local liaisons. So those are all staying intact. The only thing that's not going to lie with me anymore is the LEMPs, which is something that's done once a year anyway. It's going to just be with under VEM's key. And that being said, the stuff that I kind of pair with LEMPs, so the vulnerable populations yearly review, the Public Works Mutual Aid Agreement biannual review, that kind of stuff, I will still be doing because that's region specific. And it's not necessarily tied into the LEMPs themselves. I just always coordinated those pieces together because that's when it made the most sense to review those documents. So those will still be happening in the spring. It's just when you finish updating your LEMP, it's not coming to me. It's coming to whoever our regional coordinator is.
But the answer to my question then is, though, this change will result in a lower funding.
Yes.
Okay.
I trust Maggie more than myself on this because it's your funding. I don't have a clear answer on that, but I can check back with, yeah, if you'd like more details than what you're hearing right now, I can check back and see if I can dig them up for you. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you on it off the top of my head.
Maggie, quick question for you. What percentage of your time is spent on emergency management work? Because you do other things too at REMC, right? At Rutland Regional Planning Commission, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I've been pretty quiet on the EM front for the past several months, is because the regional plan update has been taking up a lot of time. I'm being thrown onto a bunch of other programs too. I do work part-time, the Municipal Energy Resilience Program. I've been doing the Municipal Vulnerabilities Indicator grant. That was a product of the Climate Action Plan. There's a couple of others on there now that we have HMGP. I'm the lead for that in case any of the projects in this region get approved to go on to the full application and then get awarded. I will kind of be like the support person for that. So yeah, I mean, especially compared to previous years, my palette is much more diversified than it has been in the past. And that's kind of why I wanted to have this, what I've been calling the come to Jesus conversation, where it's like, yeah, I'm spread thin, we're all spread thin, we need to figure something out.
So on paper anyway, and I recognize every organization, things are dynamic and demands change from month to month, but on paper, what percentage of your time is emergency management?
God, I don't know if I can give you a good answer for that, because like I said, it's been really curtailed the past several months for various reasons. What I can tell you is that it's one of the few programs I'm the lead on. The only other one at this point I would say I'm transitioning into a lead role is, besides HFGP, would be local hazard mitigation plans. I'm still kind of doing the onboarding for that and wrapping my arms around that process. But the intent is for me to become the lead planner pretty soon for that. I'm kind of onboarding as I'm working with Middletown Springs and Rutland City now. But as other towns come down the pipeline, I'll be like the lead person for that.
Okay, thank you.
Before we wrap up, I just happened to open the chart and Lindsay Morin from Red Cross joined us. You still on, Lindsay?
Yes, I'm here.
Would you like to, any updates from your end or?
Nope, the most update we have is we're working on getting you guys scheduled another shelter fundamentals course as soon as we can. I'm getting my certification to teach the class in December. But that invitation will go to everybody because the space we have is going to be bigger this time. But it's most likely going to be closer to the Northeast Kingdom because they haven't had one yet. But yeah, so that is on our docket right now. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. So that's the only update we have. And then we will be doing a mini smoke detector installation actually in Rutland. It's going to be October 26th, and I'll get you all the details once we finalize where we are going to be, just because we know the fire departments are busy that day because they've got some classes and stuff going on, but we'll be in the area for that and to help you guys out for your parade.
Oh, that's right. Great.
But that's all that I have.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, we'll adjourn the meeting. Well, I should announce the next meeting is December 11th, if you put it on your calendar. Hearing nothing else, we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:51.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Yeah, everyone.
Take care.
Hope we see you again, Tyga. Yes, you left.
He's gone.
Yeah, she's gone.
He's gone. All right. See you guys later.